to this live stream. Uh, and this live stream is a Q&A follow-up with from our presenter last night at the VCN Zoom meetup, Deirdre Martin. And it is called, the name of the presentation from last night is called Customer Journey Mapping and How You Can Use Video to Enhance It. There's a replay of that presentation and our post-presentation discussion that pertains to it in the post associated with this live feed. So Deirdre, thank you very much for joining me. This is kind of a new, different setup for us compared to what we typically do with these meetings. But as we talked about beforehand, we were able to view your presentation, even though you were, sleeping soundly in the middle of the night, because you created that presentation utilizing video. And that's just one of the many benefits of presenting with video, is that you can use it outside of the live time frame, which is what you're kind of restricted to with in-person presentation. So I do want to say your presentation was incredibly insightful and very well done. Thank you for putting that together. And we'll get into some discussion about it. But first, why don't you introduce yourself, let people know who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much, Neil, and great to be here. And hello, everybody who's watching. So my name is Deirdre Martin. I am based in Ireland, and I am a customer experience and marketing coach, mentor, trainer, all of those things. Essentially, what I do is I help business owners who are struggling to get clients and then later on keep those clients. So I do that by helping them with their marketing message, and then by creating a customer journey so that their clients start to work with them and think, oh my gosh, how did I manage without this person or business in my life before? Everything has just changed. And so at the end of the transaction or the sale, that the business owner says, I need to keep working with these people. And so that's what I do. So I have group programs. I work with people in a group capacity. Usually those are small service-based entrepreneurs. And otherwise, I work with SME businesses and I help them around strategy. So that takes quite a while sometimes, depending on the business and where they're at. But it's super exciting when businesses are really engaged in being present to make their customer experience exceptional. It's super exciting. Gets me going.
Excellent. That's a great intro, and I think that's a really good explanation of why you would want to focus on that customer journey. So we'll go back to one of the surprises of the presentation that I really enjoyed. You kicked it off, because we were doing it on St. Patrick's Day, with teaching the group some Irish. Do you wanna recap that?
So yesterday, I recorded the video yesterday, which was played. It was midnight here when it was played. And yes, I was already asleep in my bed at that time, maybe after a Guinness or two, Neil, for St. Patrick's Day. So I wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day in Irish. So for any of you who are who would like to be ahead of the curve next year, you can say Lá Éile Pádraig Sunnahuit. That is how you say Happy St. Patrick's Day in Irish. Lá Éile Pádraig Sunnahuit.
And I will say too, it inspired some Irish translation through Alexa here at my house when I was talking to, I watched your presentation before our meeting, and I was talking to my kids about it, and they started asking Alexa how to say all sorts of different things in Irish. And it's not a language that I guess we've had a lot of exposure to, right? Like in the States here. So it was interesting, and it was great. So thank you for that. And now we'll go on to Q&A about the actual subject at hand here. So to anyone who's watching via live stream, whether you saw the presentation last night or you just have questions on customer journey mapping, we'd love to hear them. So feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll relay them on to Deirdre. I'll go ahead and start so that we, and I'll get you set up and then take a look in the comments there. So, Deirdre, let's start with you lay out the 11 stages of a customer journey. First off, do you know all 11 off the top of your head?
I do. But here's the thing, and I didn't really have time because the presentation I had to keep it very short when I was sharing it with you. Typically in a customer journey, you might describe it as a before, during, and after stage. But what people don't realize is that clients go through phases within each of those stages. And you can take these 11 stages. I'm going to rattle them off now, Neil.
Sure.
And you can take these 11 stages and then decide, do they go before the client starts to do business with you? Are they happening whilst the client is doing business with you, or are they after the client is done doing business with you? So the first one is the need or desire phase. That's where the client recognizes they have a problem, a pain point, a goal, something that they're looking to achieve. The next one is the discovery phase, and that's where the client maybe types into Google or some search engine, how can they solve the problem that they've just realized that they now have. The third one is the inquiry phase, and that may be where the client clicks on your product or your service or enters onto your sales page, perhaps on your website. Or if you've got a physical store or shop, it's where the client walks in off the street into your premises. Evaluation comes next. The evaluation phase is where the client either accepts or rejects your offer. And sometimes for evaluation, and as I mentioned in the presentation, if the client is a logical buyer or if there are other decision makers, they may need to go home and or back to the office and have that conversation. Then it's affirmation. So it's affirming to the client that they've made a good decision and that they are on board with you. Then onboarding comes next. It's where the client moves into start to do business with you. Depending on the product or service you offer, you may take their details or perhaps get them to complete a contract or something like that to get started. Then it's activation, and activation is physically where it starts. This is typically the first time the client actually starts to use your product or service. Next then is, depending on how long your customer journey is or what your sales cycle looks like, next is acclimatization. And as I mentioned in the presentation, this is one of my favorite phases because it's where clients become accustomed to how you do things in your business. And so they start to get familiar with your language, and they start to expect your emails on a certain day if you consistently send them that way. Then there's accomplishing, which for their client, this is why they signed up to do business with you in the first place. Next is when they start adopting you, which is where if somebody says, oh my gosh, where did you get your headphones from? Where did you get your top from? Oh my gosh, what software are you using? And you instantly are talking about this amazing program or this amazing store, whatever it is. And finally is the cheerleader phase. So cheerleader is where the client will say, oh my gosh, wait till I tell you about this amazing thing that I've gotten. So without even being asked to, they will rant and rave. These are the raving fans, the diehards, the people who will absolutely whip out their megaphones and tell everybody about you. So those are the 11. I didn't do too bad remembering them.
You got them all. I had only a few of them kind of that I've retained from last night, right? So very impressive. And my next question is, with so many stages to consider, do you feel like there's one or two that are most crucial because our audience is largely solopreneurs through the lens of a solopreneur?
I mean, ultimately for solopreneurs, to grow your business, you need to get clients. And to get clients, that happens in the discovery phase. But to get the right clients, that happens in the inquiry phase. And so, I've had instances where clients have discovered me, have reached out to seek and engage in my services, but for whatever reason, I've rejected doing business with them because they weren't the right client for me. And there are multiple reasons why that's actually a good thing to do. And the first one being is they are far less likely to accomplish what it is that they set out to accomplish if they're not the right client for whatever reason. Secondly, they're much less likely to ever become your cheerleader if they're not the right client, again, for whatever reason. And thirdly, you are potentially mis-selling if they're not the right client for you in the first place. So that can have a dramatic impact on your brand down the line. If somebody feels like, they've just been sold to, if they come away feeling they've been really sold to, they're not going to enjoy the experience that your business creates. So the discovery is marketing your business. It's being visible in multiple capacities so you can get found and you can get clients. And the inquiry is when you're converting those people who've discovered you into actual paying clients. And in any business, your marketing and sales, they're like the two engines on the plane that, keep you in the air. You need your marketing and you need your sales to stay in the air. Without those, your business is going to struggle to grow and succeed. So those two, I think, Neil, for me are the two I would definitely think require focus.
That's excellent because it segues perfectly into my next question. So, again, if anybody who's watching has a question and wants to pop it in the chat, feel free to do that. And I'll get back to one of the ones that was discussed a little bit post presentation last night. So, I often kind of say it was both like one of the most important days and most disappointing days of my kind of business life cycle, or my experience of being a business owner, when I realized that without sales there's no business at all, right? Like, it does not exist. You have to sell on some level to maintain a business. And I think a lot of other creatives out there can probably relate, because it's not why you get into doing what you do. But the reality is, no sales, you got nothing. So you bring this up in the presentation, that fact, and like, I think you even say feeling icky about sales. At least that's what I have in my notes here. So you have a tip on how to not feel as salesy when you're selling. Could you share that with us?
Absolutely. I love that question, because I did a survey on this a while ago, and the two things that people hated, sales wasn't the first one actually in their business. The first one was their finances and financials and doing the accounts and the taxes and stuff. And the second one was sales. So yes, a lot of people feel icky when it comes to selling, and it's not something that comes very naturally to people. And I think in my own experience, this was the realization that I had, and it's 20 years ago, and it stood me in good stead, is that you in your business have enormous knowledge about the product or service that you offer. And you know that if you get the right person with the right problem, or who's trying to achieve a particular thing, to engage with you, well, then you can help them get from where they are to where they're going to get to. So how I like to remind people to frame this is, what you're doing is you're actually giving a solution. So if you think of it, what they're paying for is a solution. They're not paying for your product or service, they're paying to solve the problem. So, years ago when I started working in the bank, internet banking was pretty much just a new thing in Ireland back in 2001. And around 2002, 2003, the banks started to introduce internet business banking type systems. So these were new. It started with phone banking and then it moved to internet banking here, right? And so part of my job was to get more business owners to take this internet banking service. But so I had to think about what are the main benefits for a business to do this. So first thing was, well, they have instant access to check for any payments that have come in or gone out of their accounts at all times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For a business that's tight on cash flow or struggling to collect from their creditors, that's something that's exceptionally useful. Secondly, people often have to queue to come into the bank to speak to a cashier, so it's going to save them time. Thirdly, they don't have to wait for their bank statements to come out in post because transactions are happening in real time. And fourth, when they made payments electronically in this way, it was actually a cheaper way for them to do their banking. So all of these things were solutions to people's problems. But the thing was, they didn't realize they were problems. So I couldn't say, right, you need to sign up for this internet banking thing. So you're going to need internet banking. You're going to need internet access, which was dial-up at the time, right? You're going to need internet. You're going to need a computer. You're going to need this software. You're going to need that. You're going to need all these things. Instead, I'm like, I'm going to save you time because I'm going to give you this. I'm going to save you money because I'm going to give you that. So I created solutions to people who didn't realize that these things over here were actually a problem. So it is about identifying how are you making somebody's life better. This is where they're at, but by using what you offer, they're actually going to be placed in a better position. So it's about reframing that in your mind, because every business does that in some way. They may just not yet be clear on what that way is.
Or yes, yeah, helping, right? Like how if you look at it through helping versus like making a sale, solving a problem as you put it there, that is a it's a huge mind shift that I think can help a lot of people who are not sure about their sales. Now, the other piece that comes with that is you have to actually be helping people, right? So
Absolutely.
yes,
Yeah.
right. Which is good if you can with a with a clear conscience be like, I'm helping this person, then it just makes that transition so much more I don't know, mutually beneficial, I guess. So
Absolutely. And I mean, sometimes it depends on what you offer, but really what you're offering is education. You're educating people in some way. Like, just to use you as an example, Neil, with the people that are in your group, you're educating them on ways that they can use tools that improve their business, that improve their customer experiences, because by using that video option, it's saving them in some other way. It's helping people get to know, like, and trust them. So maybe it's actually speeding up the relationship because, and we talked about this before we came on camera. Like yesterday, somebody connected with me on Facebook. I'm like, who's this person? And immediately I went into their profile. I scrolled through their profile. I'm like, who are they? And the first thing I did was I watched a video. I'm like, what are they talking about? Do they seem, trustworthy? What, is the topic interesting? Is it something worth connecting with them about? And so that comes back to the discovery phase and the inquiry phase and the journey, and it ties in. So if you show up on video and clients get that sense of know, liking, and trusting you, even if you can, what is the saying? Sell sand to the Arabs. Even if you can sell sand to the Arabs, you should never sell it unless it is actually the right sand that those Arabs need, right?
right.
It's not one
Something
they can get in the desert.
right. Something that's actually beneficial on the client side for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, what we often say within the network is you can meet somebody before you meet somebody, like in that very same way. You were able to get a sense of who that person was on Facebook by watching video in more of a
Mhm.
sense than you would have by reading a couple lines of text that they wrote, or looking at pictures or whatever. So it can be really powerful. um
Exactly. And that makes the sales conversation a lot easier.
yeah, yeah, well, and then to let people know where that conversation went before we got on from there, like, I find this to be by far the most beneficial to folks who are selling services that like they themselves are going to be really a big part of. So, like yourself as a coach and consultant, when people buy your service, they deal directly with you. So, a chance to put yourself out there and kind of let them know what you're like and introduce yourself and um, that type of stuff can be super beneficial because people pretty quickly get an idea of like, yeah, I'd love to work with that person, or maybe that person's not for me. So it's an interesting time saver, and I think you're right too that it can speed up that cycle. So
Exactly. And,
yep.
I like to give examples, very strong examples when I'm talking to my clients. So the point comes across. And we were discussing this at some point in the last couple of weeks where it was actually to do with brand and brand personality as well. And we were discussing the likes of Red Bull, where when you see their videos or their advertisements, it's all about Red Bull will give you wings and make you fly. And, it's very lively, it's energetic, and it's fun. Well, what's going to happen is the type of people that Red Bull will attract from their marketing message and those advertisements that they use, and it's always video, right? That's their vibe, then attracts their tribe. In
Yep.
contrast to other, maybe more clandestine style videos where things are much calmer or maybe more luxurious. And so those are the type of people then that it starts to attract. And similarly, in the language that we use when we engage with people, be it on video, in this inquiry phase, in the sales stage, keeping the language really simple is effective. But also, and I mentioned this in the presentation, that you can use videos to present the solution that your product or service provides. And a really fantastic way to think about that is that you can paint a picture of what success looks like. You can show the end result with video. In just a normal conversation, that's not something you have the capacity to do. So video can be a phenomenal tool to use for things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will put out one last call for questions here. Anyone watching live, if you want to pop in a question. Otherwise, I've got one more for you, Deirdre, and then I think we'll wrap up with our customer journey mapping conversation here. So, yeah, we didn't have any others come in, so here we go. Ready? Accomplishing phase. This was one that we talked about quite a bit after the presentation last night. Um, in that accomplishing phase, I think you mentioned a stat, something to the effect of 70% of businesses that buy in don't achieve their goals, or something to that effect. Do you remember the statistical line?
Yeah. So let's say clients who buy into businesses, 70% of them don't accomplish the goal or get their problem solved that they set out to achieve in the first instance. And this comes back to the point I made earlier, Neil, where in that inquiry phase where we're having the sales conversations with people, that we're not overselling or overpromising what people are going to actually accomplish by doing business with us. And so whether you use, if you have a flow, maybe a questionnaire that you ask, or you have a style of conversation that you use that helps you determine, by working with this client, can I help them accomplish? And sometimes in this inquiry phase, you need to repel or reject, as I said earlier, the people who are not right to work with you.
Yep.
I had a fabulous lady that I met last year, and she was a new coach or consultant, and she would have been perfect for the program that I teach. But her headspace was just not in the right place for her to really participate in the program and get the results that she was aiming to achieve. And I really got that sense from her. And teasing out the conversation with her, she agreed at the end that she wasn't ready to go ahead. But then she later emailed me and said, no, I really want to. But I held firm because I just felt, no, I'm sorry, I don't think you're the right client for me. Because I personally felt from the questions I'd asked her, she was going to procrastinate. She was going to get,
Mhm.
in her own way and not accomplish what it was that she wanted to. So that's what I suggest. Yeah.
Yeah, that leads in really well to my next note here because like some of the discussion, well, first off, that that's incredible advice. You need to select your clients, especially as a smaller business, because I used to always share this blog post that was out there from a website called The Creative Cow, and it would talk about clients and grinders. Like you've got the people who are really good clients and like drive your business forward, and then you have a lot of people in the middle, and then you have what they call the grinders, which would be probably, someone you're banging your head against the wall because they're not doing what they're supposed to do in like the coaching space, right? And it's not beneficial to your business overall. You invest more time in them, they expect more, they're not doing their part, like it just gets messy. So,
Exactly.
yeah, and you also touched on the discussion last night was a lot of it was around, well, whose fault is the 70% that don't achieve their goals? And we talked a bit about like um maybe over promising or a bad fit as
Hmm.
a through the sales process. And then the I have in my notes shiny object syndrome. So a lot of the time, a somebody might be like, well, all this stuff is wrong, but I'll buy this solution and maybe it'll fix it. And then, yeah, maybe not put in all the work or whatever, right? And
Hmm.
the example that we talked about a lot was the beginning of new year, beginning of every new year, people have their New Year's resolutions for weight loss, and everybody signs up for a gym membership, and it just y- it usually doesn't work out, right? It's not a transformational thing. You sign up for a few months and you go a couple of times and that's it. So I guess that's a long way around to um you know do all businesses care about this, right? So like the model for the gyms and everybody signing up, like they probably from a budgeting standpoint really bank on that big glut of signups at the beginning of the year, and they don't build out their facilities because they know half those people will be gone in 3 months. So I guess that's not a question, but what do you
Yeah,
think
but no,
about that
I,
discussion there?
yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, and that can happen with the subscription model. And sometimes what happens with subscription models as well is that people will keep paying it and paying it and paying it, but if they're not actually taking or extracting value from it, if they're not accomplishing what they set out to accomplish, eventually they might start to resent it.
Hmm.
So what you can do, and there's ways that you can check in to see how's your client going. But one of the first things I really like to do at the inquiry phase, and I've learned this as my business has grown as well, is to determine what is success going to look like for you? How will we know that you are accomplishing this goal? What little kind of milestones will we be able to acknowledge and celebrate as you accomplish this goal? And one thing that I always ask people about is in how committed are they to achieving it and how do they feel about being held to account? So sometimes, like I've got one or two clients, and one in particular who openly says, I need the accountability, Deirdre, and
Hmm.
that's why they're working with me, is because I will hold them to account and I will ask the question, have you done this yet? These are the results you're looking for. These are the steps you need to take. How many of them have you taken? And so when I do that, then in terms of the accomplishing phase, the client is well aware it's because they didn't take those action steps. But from a business perspective, on the other hand, if I wasn't checking in with the client, that's part of my promise is to help them achieve their results. But so if I'm not holding myself to account and checking in with the client to see if they're actually making those steps and making progress, well, then I haven't helped the client accomplish, because part of my promise was the accountability piece. And what I've seen happen recently, and I mean, I'm still customer experience, whilst I've been doing this for a long time, I still see things from time to time that I think, wow, that's such a great idea. It's really simple and effective. And sometimes people don't realize they're creating customer experiences, but they are. And my point is, I saw this lovely email come through, which was an email list that I'd signed up to. And it was like, hey, Deirdre, are you still checking these emails? I've noticed you haven't really looked in for a while. And it was, do you want to stay subscribed, or here's the unsubscribe option? Which would you prefer? And I went, no, I actually like these emails. I'm going to stay subscribed. I've just been busy, right? And I haven't had time to check in. So doing check-ins like that for people who are actually clients. I wasn't a client even of this email person. It was just, are you opting in or what, And so from a business perspective, as business owners, I think there is, an unspoken obligation where we should be doing this. And probably every business owner knows they should be doing this, but finding the time is the challenge. So, in the presentation, and I mentioned this, I called this out yesterday in the presentation, a great way to do this is to include somewhere, a touch point along the client's journey to check in. Are they accomplishing it? Have they reached those little minor milestones yet? Because that's your way of saying, I'm here to help you if you haven't. I want you to get the results that you set out to accomplish, and what you need from me. So it's really, it's I'm here to serve you. How can I serve you? But it's also a little bit of accountability on them if the client needs it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a much better answer to my rambling than I put it out there. So, I mean, and what it sounds like is, and I think we can all agree, you certainly should care in this accomplishing phase. And it sounds like that you do very much care. And I hope that everybody who's, checking this out also cares about the accomplishing phase with their customer journey. And we'll leave the gyms alone now, right? And that whole that whole January thing. But I would be, I think that's a great point, and that's an important part of the journey. So thank you for that explanation. And I think with that, because we're just over the 12:30 mark here, we're going to close this Q&A. So to everyone who is watching, if you find this type of content intriguing and you want to learn how to grow your business with video, join us for our next Zoom meetup, which is on April 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern. It features podcast expert and producer Ryan Sullivan. So Ryan's going to be kicking off YouTube month for us, which is a popular month. And he's presenting Understanding YouTube, How to Create on the Second Largest Search Engine. You can RSVP to that event on the vidwheel LinkedIn page or at events.vidwheel.com. Deirdre, thank you very much for taking the time to chat and share your wisdom today. Thank you for putting together the presentation last night. This has been an incredibly insightful kind of dual meeting that we had going on here. So
absolutely. Thank you again so much for having me, Neil. And it's great to be part of your vidwheel community for a day or so.
Sure. Yeah, it was great. We'll do it again sometime.
Definitely, 100%.
Excellent. Thank you.